Welcome to Take Me With You, Episode 10. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Today, we are talking to me
about
the trip I just took to Spain.
Yay! I'm so excited to hear.
I know. I have been wanting to send you texts and photos and tell you all about it, and I'm like, no, I have to save it for the air.
I know, and you've been posting pictures, and I've been looking at them, and oh my gosh, she's going to so many amazing places.
So first of all, we should say this is going to be a two-parter. So this is going to be both episodes 10 and 11 about this trip. We are preemptively making this decision because I have a lot of things to tell you today. So
you were gone for 3 whole weeks, so that's a lot of experience.
Yes,
and
I
how
was.
many different cities?
Oh gosh, okay. Here's our rundown: Madrid, Valencia, Barcelona, Girona, Estella, Matricu,
6,
San Sebastian,
7.
Back to Madrid.
So that's 7 different cities.
Correct.
8 if you include the 2 visits to Madrid.
Correct. I counted how many different beds I slept in, or times I picked up and moved to different locations, and it was 7.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and that is why you pack light. Because at one point, I think my last night in Madrid, I was staying at this girl's place, and she was in this flat on the 4th floor, and we walked in, and we were about to go up the stairs. There's no elevator, and she looks at me, and she was like, "You ready?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm ready. How many stairs? Let's do this." And she was like, I don't want to tell you how many stairs. You should just enjoy the journey." And I was like,
"Oh, geez,
that's not a good answer." So we climbed up them, and it just kind of kept going because she didn't tell me what floor she was on, and so it was the 4th floor. And then she turned around, and she was like, 81. And that is why you pack light.
Yeah.
So,
at some point, we'll probably have to talk a little bit more about the packing strategy and how do you stay organized when you have to pack and unpack that many times and things like that.
Yeah, and even laundry and all those pieces.
Yes.
So, I think we decided, it was we need to just do a packing episode because that's what this could be right now, but that's not what this is right now. And so
that's not what this is. That's not what this is. So, Cheryl, I know you're not going to like this question.
I don't like this question. I already know I don't like this question.
I know you don't.
Yeah.
But of the entire trip, what was the highlight?
Ryan, I don't want to answer this question.
I know, because you want everything to be a highlight.
Everything was the highlight. However, I've been thinking about this. This is so hard. I like a lot of things. Okay. Thematically, the highlight was the people, because I met a lot of really wonderful people, and I got to stay with Spaniards and things like that and meet people
That's super cool.
from Spain and from other areas, and I had a lot of really beautiful interactions and create a lot of new relationships with people that I really want to see again and stay in touch with. And so as cool as the buildings were and the food was and all of that and all of those experiences and how beautiful the country is, really those connections were truly what made it this was very good. So yeah.
That's cool.
And now I want to list 10 other highlights for you.
So I'm gonna ask you another question that isn't technically the same, but it's related.
Okay.
Because this was your 5th time in Spain?
Fourth
time in Spain.
Best time.
So how
Spain.
does this rank?
Number 1.
Does it?
Number 1. Because this time more than ever before, I felt like I really got to see the culture. So my first time there, it was 18 years ago. I was in middle school, and we didn't do much in the way of tours and things because we were visiting friends. We did go to Segovia, and that was very cool to see the aqueduct and the castle and everything. But, I was young, and so, the next time was more on the touristy side, other than a little bit of staying with friends, but really mainly touristy. And that was very cool. I really like touristy things.
Sure.
However, and then the next time I was mainly volunteering at this retreat. And so it wasn't even really about what country I was in so much, you know what I mean? And so it was much more about like these people that I was serving. This time I stayed with Spaniards several times. I went and did a number of things that are not touristy, and so I felt like I got, probably out of any trip I've ever taken, I feel like I got the most of like a local experience. And
That's
I
really
learned
cool.
a lot about Spain and about Spaniards and about the different regions. And I mean, it's just like makes me want to go back. And I got to speak Spanish more than ever before. And so
cool.
that was also very cool, because several times I stayed with people who just don't speak English. And I was like, well, all right,
here we go.
Here we go. So, I think just like that, this is definitely the favorite, of the visits to Spain.
That's awesome. So then you're going to hate the next question also.
Why are we doing this podcast, right?
I know this was your favorite, which that answer doesn't surprise me, just based on what the things that I saw you post as you were doing it, and like little bits and pieces that I heard. That doesn't surprise me to hear from you. It sounds like it was a great trip. Yeah. But what was your low?
Okay, so this was really hard because, I mean, you probably won't be surprised by this. Everything went well. Okay. Like, I made every train. Like all the plans, even the plans that changed, the alternative plans were actually even cooler. I mean, just like, I loved everything I did. I mean, and so it just like, it is something where I kept thinking about that because I knew that you were going to ask me this question. And so, but I do have a low, and it is for a specific reason. It's actually a very cool thing that I just didn't like the context in which I was doing it. And that was in Barcelona. So we had talked about this when we recorded my planning episode like 2 episodes ago is when we did that. And so we had talked about La Pedrera and the Casa Mila that's by Gaudi in Barcelona. And it's this cool like building that he designed. I think there's like apartments on some of the floors, maybe, and then the top floor or maybe the top 2 floors are a museum, and then you can go on the roof, and it's a very cool rooftop, and you can see the city, and you can see La Sagrada Familia, and so I was looking up things going on in Barcelona when I was going to be there, and I was like, oh, jazz music, heck yes, on the rooftop of the Casa Mila. And so it was just wow. So I went and did that. It was very cool. I would recommend it to anybody. It was very cool. However... So
that's your low.
Here's what makes it my low, is that there were times when I did this trip alone. I visited a lot of people, so actually a lot of my time was spent with people. However, there were some days where I was just by myself. This was something I did by myself. Not the favorite. Like, there are plenty of things. Yourself. Yeah, there are plenty of things I'm so happy to do alone. And even like, we talked about like, I went to the beach several times. That's a great alone activity. Or like, even I'm someone who's like comfortable going out to eat on my own or things like that, right. And so there were a number of things I did that totally worked being by myself. This was not great. I was sitting up there like kind of regretting it, to be honest with you. And so, really? It was just like, I was like, I don't want to be here right now. And so that was the only moment on the whole trip when it was any form of a low, because everything went so well and everything was awesome. And still, all in all, that was very cool, but like, it just made me, you and I have talked about traveling alone. It made me realize how alone I was. It's like when you went to Switzerland, you said the last city you went to made you feel alone because there's a festival there. That's how I felt in that moment. Yeah. And so, because there were people around me having fun, and there were some like, first of all, like really obnoxious American tourists next to me that I was like, please, may I never, ever be this person. And so it was just all of that combined with like, I was kind of hitting a tired point on that day. And so,
how far into your trip was that?
It was, a little over a week. So, okay. Yeah. So yeah, that was the low, although I would still recommend it because it's really cool. Just like go with a button, Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Go with a crew. You'll have more fun. I mean, I also did get to drink cava, which is like the champagne of Spain. And so, you know, that was exciting. You know.
That's cool. And jazz on a rooftop overlooking the city.
Yeah, you know. So
it's pretty high low.
That's a very high low. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now that we've got the highlight and we've got the low, why don't you fill us in on some details?
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, because, I took notes. I never take notes when I travel. But for
you also
our dear
haven't
listeners,
had a podcast when you've traveled.
Yes, exactly. I have to remember the details of what to share. Now, and I remember details of travel pretty well, but I don't remember names of things well, and so I did make sure to write down, like, I should probably share, like, the names of these things.
Yeah.
So first of all, I just have some general notes on the trip, and then I think what I'll do is just walk you through pretty much in chronological order, just I guess by city. And so I think what we can do is roughly half of the locations today, and then half next week on the next episode.
Sounds good.
We'll see how it goes time-wise. So, first of all, I just have some general notes on both travel and on this country specifically and what I did. So, first of all, this was probably one of the least planned trips I've ever taken. I mean,
really?
we did a planning episode.
Yes, we did.
And so, with that planning episode, it was super helpful because I knew, like, it helped me figure out, like, a lot of my options in the places I went to. I also did book that hotel that Rick Steves recommended in Barcelona.
And from what I hear, it was worth the recommendation?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. The Fashion House B&B in Barcelona. Everyone needs to stay there. So
cool.
Good. I really liked it. But really, like, it wasn't much planning. Like, I had, because what I do when I travel is I print all of my reservations for everything. I mean, I also have it electronically on my phone, but for whatever reason, if I need a printed copy of whatever ticket. And so it was a much shorter stack than a lot of trips I've taken. So, like, I did have a handful of reservations, like for the Prado in Madrid or for, the food tour that I did in Barcelona or things like that. But really, like, I knew my options pretty well. And then it was just kind of like, because I was going to be staying with people, it was like, well, who knows what's going to happen? Like, are they going to be busy? Are they going to be free? Right. And so, I gotta say, I'm so happy I didn't plan much. I'm not always a very spontaneous person, but there was so much spontaneity that happened on this trip, and I just loved it. Like, it really made me rethink, like, should I keep doing travel with more spontaneity? And so,
really? Like, may even shift the way you travel?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so it was just really cool because even, like, one of the days I was in Madrid, like, there weren't I did have a plan. My plan for the day was to spend time with people because that's when the people I was staying with were available. Right. And then all of a sudden I met this girl and she was like, hey, I'm going to this beer festival with these other people. And I was like, cool. Yeah, let's go. And so it was just things like that where I was like, hey, this thing is happening. But on a larger scale, several of the places that I thought I was going to be staying, things changed. So I actually ended up staying in different cities than I thought I was going to stay in.
Oh, like full on different cities?
Yes, different cities.
Oh, that would stress me out.
I know. I can see the stress right now. And it was funny, though, because Dan, I'm going to be referencing him and his wife, Lynn. They live in Madrid. They're old family friends. They're Americans who have lived in Spain for a long time and just really amazing people. And so he was really the one helping me coordinate a lot. He was one that made all these amazing connections for me because he's quite the networker. And so,
yes, he is.
But one thing he told me is he was like, Cheryl, like you'll need to be flexible on this trip because it's Spaniards and Spaniards are last minute and things change. And so he was like, that's just, if you're going to be staying with people here and like things are going to change and you just, flexibility is the way to go. And I enjoy planning, but also, like, I can roll with things pretty well. And so it was pretty easy for me to be flexible. And also, like, I think because I want to go everywhere, when it's like, oh, you can't go here, but you can go here instead. I'm like, oh, cool, that place sounds great, And so, I tend to just see, like, the positive and the excitement of that, I guess. And so, so that was really interesting because, like, I'm in Madrid sitting at their dining table, and he's like, oh, so by the way, I realized that these people we were going to have you stay with in San Sebastian live outside of the city, and there's not good public transportation, so I don't think you should stay there. And so he was like, so either you could, like, Airbnb it, you know, and still stay in San Sebastian. He's like, or I know these people in this tiny little fishing town between San Sebastian and Bilbao on the coast. And he was like, they're really cool, they're wonderful, and it would be a totally different experience. And I was like, okay. And so,
Wow.
So I went and stayed. So it was like all of those things that changed. It was just like really good things and very cool. And even like that's something I do love about the train system as opposed to just flying is like there were a couple like last minute train changes I needed to make, and that wasn't a big deal. And even like buying a new train ticket like the day before is not a big deal. And so
Nice.
So that was really cool as far as like it was just pretty easy. That combined with like smartphones and Wi-Fi made life so much easier.
Modern travel.
Yeah, modern travel. Big fan. So yeah, I think that was just something that like was very new for me and I really loved. And so I don't know, like I think if zero locals were involved in it, like if it was just me going up to a place and being a tourist, I don't know if I would need to do that level of spontaneity again. You know what I mean? Because it's like,
right.
if you're just doing hotels the whole time, then, you know, it's like,
then
that
you
makes
do
a
need
little
at least
more
some
sense.
part of a plan.
Yeah, but even in the past, even one time, you know, when I was in Rome and went on a food tour and the tour guide was like recommended a place to us. And it was like, well, this is our last day in Rome. Also, like, we already know what we're doing the rest of the day, so we don't have time. So I think even having the freedom in a schedule to be like hearing recommendations and having the time to go do things, you know, that are really cool. And so it was just a really cool experience getting to like, you know, have a greater amount of spontaneity and realizing how much I loved it. And so that was really cool. So another note I wrote down is that the order that I did this trip, I mean, obviously it just had to do with geography. I did a loop. So like that was the order, was like what's next to what, you know?
Right.
But it ended up being so cool because each location took me a little further outside of my comfort zone in different ways. And so that was really neat. I started the most in my comfort zone where two Americans picked me up from the airport, like straight up, like parked their car, went in the airport to pick me up, spoke English to me in their home. You know what I mean? Like that's very comfort zone. And but then they were busy for a couple of days. So then I took some public transportation into Madrid. So then it was like some time alone, but still like, I don't know, that was still pretty within my comfort zone, what I was doing. And then I stayed with people, the next city I went to who don't speak English. And so then it was
different
like,
experience.
Yes. And then it was, I'm staying just by myself in a city. Like no one is here. It's just me. You know, and so that was a different level. And then it was staying in this tiny little town with people who don't speak English. And honestly, like, our personalities they were lovely. Our personalities didn't instantly mesh quite as well. And so that was, you know, it was just kind of these things where, like, each stage was, like, took me a little more, like, outside of my comfort zone. And so it was a very, very cool experience. And that it happened in that order, you know, like, and it warmed me up to the language more and to the people. And so, yeah.
So what would you say at the beginning of the trip, your level of familiarity / comfort with the Spanish language? Where would you place yourself?
Oh, gosh.
You've talked about speaking Spanish.
Yes. I took it in high school and one course in college. So maybe like 3 Spanish classes.
Okay.
And that was over 10 years ago.
And have you practiced it since then?
Not much.
Okay.
And it was so cool how much came back. Like, there were things where I was like, I didn't know that was in my brain. And so that was very cool. super thankful for Spanish classes, really, because it was like so cool being like, oh, I know how to talk about this now. I mean, it was very challenging, and part of the reason I would say in general for travelers, like, I mean, really, I don't know, go to a city, like, you're going to find people who are going to be able to help you and speak English. You know what I mean? It's like English is very prominent, really, anywhere. But if you know some of a language, being a tourist is pretty easy because you need to ask questions like, where is the bathroom and how much does this cost? You know, like those are the language need is pretty simple. For me, it became a lot more challenging because I was getting to know people, you know, and I was staying with them.
Right.
And I was, we haven't said this in this episode, I'm the program director at a camp. And so I got to visit 3 camps over in Spain. And so I was talking to people about like work, you know, like, and so.
And I'm sure that's the same vocabulary that you learned when you took Spanish in high school and college,
that's like
right?
Spanish 101 for sure. But so that was just really interesting, just like trying to figure out like how do we talk about like how do our organizations run, you know, and like and getting to know someone and not just getting to know them like how many siblings do you have and where are you from and how long have you lived there, but like getting to know them, you know. And so that was very stretching. But I think the cool thing is like when you don't have a choice, you know, like it comes a lot faster, you know, when it's like, well,
sure.
English is not an option right now, so I guess this is what's happening, you know. And so, and also, I mean, people were so gracious and just happy that I was trying and worked with me, you know what I mean? And so people were, I'm sure I messed up so much of my grammar, you know, and like my grammar must have just been horrendous, to be honest. And so, but I mean, people were just like so kind about it and just wanted to hear what I had to say, even if it was clunky or I wasn't pronouncing it correctly. And then I tried very hard, like the accent over there is a different accent than I was taught because I was taught like Latin America Spanish, not Spain Spanish. And so even like there is a verb tense that they only use in Spain. And so like my Spanish classes, they were just like, you don't need to know this. So like I just, and I was like, Spanish teachers, why did you do that? And so
that's the vosotros,
yes,
right?
Oh, you know that. Good job.
Look at my Spanish memory. Yeah, my Spanish teachers did the same thing. You won't need it unless you're in Spain. Although I think there is a country in South America that also uses it. Either Chile or Argentina.
Interesting.
I could be wrong, but...
Yeah, and then the accent is different, and even like, I mean, just like, it's the same thing how in England they say the loo instead of the bathroom. There are words like that, where it's like, I learned the word for juice, and that is not the word for juice in Spain. And so it was just kind of like, things like that, where, and so, but it was cool because I tried really hard, and then people would commend me on that as well, and I had, this must have been people just being nice, but a lot of people told me my Spanish was very good. They were just being nice. Let's be honest with ourselves. But
I mean, I don't know. Maybe your Spanish was really good. Maybe you only said the things that you were really good at saying.
Yeah, and then I was just silent. But it's funny with language where like you see less of someone's personality when there's that language barrier, because the moments where I'd talk to someone, or like I was staying with this girl in Valencia, but like she spoke some English, but her parents didn't speak any. So when we were with her parents, it was just Spanish. And then when it was her and I, she just started talking to me in English, which were like nice little breaks. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, and my personality's back. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it is funny how some of that, you lose that when you're like working so hard. And I was like, how many people just think I'm like a quiet person right now? Because I'm struggling, you know? And so,
well, and see, and that's super helpful to remember. Like, I think for me as a teacher, I have a number of students who are, English is not their first language, right? They're new to the country or whatever. And we're encountering more and more people, at least in this area of the country where I live, that has become more and more common over the years. They're experiencing the same thing that you're describing, except they live here now.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So feeling like they can't
also just
fully be themselves.
Yeah. I know. It was interesting because I'm a very like expressive person, and it was funny like having that be so limited in some ways. Yeah. And so, but it also made me want to live there so I can become fluent, because how awesome would that be?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think another thing I just wanted to note is, talking about traveling alone. Like, I gotta say, I felt safe the whole trip.
That's great.
There was never a moment I felt unsafe. And I was talking to this man about that. These people I visited up in Hirona at this camp.
Not just a random man on the street you felt safe talking to.
Oh my gosh. That was the perfect timing for me to say that, wasn't it? Yeah. And this man on the street in the middle of the night, we were having this conversation about that.
But I felt totally safe. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he took my purse.
Good story.
Yeah. No, it was great. But we were talking about that because he works at this camp, and so they have Americans come over and volunteer to help at the camp. And a year and a half ago, when there was the terrorist incident in Barcelona, I don't know if you remember that, the car that drove up on the sidewalk and in this pedestrian area and killed a bunch of people. So Hirona is like a half an hour train ride north.
Okay.
It's like, okay, the camp, they're like out in the middle of nowhere. They're in farmland. And so it's funny that like they had 4 groups cancel on them because of this situation that happened in Barcelona, because they're like, well, we were going to go to Barcelona. We're not going to go there anymore. And so he was telling me, he was like, it's interesting. He was like, how do we communicate? Like, okay, come on, look at this place. Like, this is a small town in Spain. Like, we're fine, And so it was interesting, like, thinking about that. But then I think also, one thing, and I was telling him, is like, in the States, frequently if I'm in a city and I'm not walking with a man, I get catcalled. I don't know if you're aware of this because you are a man, so you may not witness all of this, but you probably are somewhat aware of it.
And for the record, thing. I also don't catcall.
Okay, thank you.
Just to also clarify
that. So, I in Europe, I've been to Europe, I don't know, 6 times, like frequently without a man around. I've never once been catcalled, never once. And so, and even like,
which
I was
is great,
telling, yes,
but that's terrible for us.
Yes, for sure. Culture. However, like, I guess what I want to say is the idea of going overseas as a single woman, a lot of people were like, whoa, is she going to be, and it's like, okay, I also like walk in the city alone sometimes in the States. It's like, what's really the difference, I mean, not every country. However, it's like, I don't know. And even like, okay, so I was sharing with Dan in Madrid about this, and he told me that in all his time living in Spain, he's only witnessed catcalling 2 times. Both times, the people around the man who did it, like, shamed him.
Wow.
Like, it was not okay. Like, he
That's
said he
great.
witnessed it on a train one time, and this other older woman came and, like, started, like, telling this guy off, and then, like, spat on him and walked away.
Oh.
And it was like, that is the level of social acceptability. Is that a word? You know what I mean? And so it's just like, anyway, and even like, if you think about the nightlife, I've experienced the nightlife in Spain and in Italy and, in France a little bit too, as far as like, it's just much more like families are out and like older couples, and just, it's like just the people are out late at night. And so even the idea of like walking around at night is just like, I feel so much more safe over there, and like, just really everywhere I was, I felt very safe. And so I just wanted to share that as people are processing like decision making when it comes to travel. And so
that's useful to know.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So gosh, so many notes, but let's get into it. Oh, I did have one more language note. This is not a language podcast. This will never be a language podcast. You and I are not meant to teach that. However, I do have a note about language. If people are speaking English in other countries, it's helpful to remember the British terms for things. Like if someone is speaking English to you, they might use a British term. So that was just, like takeaway or water closet or things like that. So that was just something I definitely noticed is like, even if someone was going to talk to me in English or if there's a sign in English, it's like, it's not takeout, it's not to go, it's takeaway, so just, it's helpful to know like what part of the world are you in and what type of English did they learn if you're trying to do English in another country. So, that was just a little note I had. So let's see. Let's get into it. All right. So
let's do it.
You want me to take you with you? So,
definitely.
Started in Madrid, stayed with this couple. They lived outside of Madrid in like a suburb kind of. And so they, I wanted to go into the city. And so there was a commuter train that was like a mile from their house. It was great. 45-minute train ride, but like so easy and everything. And like came out right at the large Atocha station that's in Madrid. That's where all the major like trains come in and out as well. And so that was really cool. It was very easy to get into the city. Also, there's just really good public transportation there, not surprising. And so it was also very easy to get around the city. And Madrid is just very pedestrian heavy. And so it's a very pedestrian place, and so it's very easy to be someone who's walking around there. I hardly did any of the metro when I was there, but that's simply because I love walking in a city. Like I a lot of the time will choose walking over doing public transit just because like it was like all the weather was just gorgeous. Like this whole other than a couple of days of like hard rain, which is really fun. It was just like sunny and beautiful, and so I just wanted to be out anyway. And so and then...
So you'd been to Madrid before?
Briefly, yes.
But not really experienced Madrid.
Yes. I had done like one thing in Madrid. And so, so the first day there, I did 4 museums.
Wow, museum day.
Museum day, yeah. And I think I'm happy I did it that way. Like I enjoyed myself the whole day. After that, I was like, we don't need to do museums for a little while now.
I was going to say, so remind me and our listeners.
Yes.
Where are you on the whole museum spectrum? Are you a museum person? Are you a sometimes, or it depends?
I do like a museum. I'm not going to see everything when I'm there. That is for certain, unless it's a very small museum. But I like an art museum. Yeah. I like art, and so I definitely enjoy that. If I am briefly in a city and I have a choice of like one thing to do, it's probably not going to be a museum. Like it's not the top. I mean, food is really the top, so I guess
sure.
like that I would rather.
That makes sense.
If I have a couple days in a city and there's like a good museum or two there, like I'm interested. If there is famous art to be seen, like. I'm excited about that. And so...
Although, I do feel like it's important to also share that you were unaware of the Prado Museum.
Yeah. I was not unaware of the Prado. I didn't know where the Prado was.
Okay.
There is a distinguishing difference there.
Sure. Okay.
I knew the Prado.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not an expert. I am an appreciator. Yes, yeah. I do enjoy them. I don't know all the things. There's a lot I don't know, but I really do like looking at art. And I think there's something very peaceful about walking around a museum that I really enjoy as well. It's a really good solo activity, and so I love being able to just go at my own pace and just kind of like there's something really nice about it, and just like just kind of taking the time in a quiet space to walk around and look at beautiful things, and so,
cool.
Yeah, I think that's what I like about it. And then if there's an artist that is well known or one that I'm into, then I'm very excited about it. And so, yeah, I won't spend forever there. Like,
you did 4 museums in a day.
Yes, so I clearly didn't because you could spend several days at just the Prado, and I spent like 1 or 2 hours at the Prado, and I was like, this is a nice amount of time to be here. So I did the Reina Sofia, the Thyssian.
Okay.
It's not a Spanish word. The Prado, and then the pronunciation is going out the window. Caixa, but it's a weird pronunciation. Kasha in my forum. It's a little one. It's a little bitty.
Okay.
So the Reina Sofia. The reason I went there is because you told me that Guernica is there. Picasso's Guernica. I would say my experience with Guernica was the opposite of the experience with the Mona Lisa. Where like,
oh really?
Yeah, it's bigger than I thought it was going to be. And the Mona Lisa, I mean, we've talked about this on our show.
It's disappointing.
Yeah, not my fave. I'd rather see a copy than the original, to be honest. But no.
But Guernica was impressive.
It takes up a wall. Like it is big. I stared at it for a long time, and it was just like it's. I mean, it's about it's about the bombing in Guernica. So like, it's a very like sad painting.
And that's Picasso, right?
It's Picasso, And then in the room next to it is all of his like concept art and like his sketches and everything, like building
for
up.
Guernica.
Yes. So that was also very cool, seeing all the ideas behind it. So I chose to go look at the painting first, and then go look at the ideas, and then go back to the painting to kind of like, because I mean, I've seen it, but I don't remember all the details, because there's so much happening. There's so much in it, and I mean, like, it is pretty heartbreaking, I mean, there's like people screaming in terror because it's about a bombing. It's very effective. But I spent a while just looking at that. It is also a very cool museum as far as it's really beautiful. So it's like a square shape with a big, I'm losing my words right now. A big open space that is open air in the middle of a building is called
like a plaza.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, that's not how they would use that word in Spain.
Sure.
However, in the States, I guess we'd call it that. But yeah, and so it was just beautiful. There was not a lot of people there. We do have to say I went in September, which is important to talk about with this trip, because tourist season in Spain is hardcore, and it's in the summer. And then September...
Right, so you were on shoulder season.
There were not tourists. And so everywhere I went, people were like, isn't it cool how empty this is? In August, this was booming. And I'm like, yeah, this is really good. Combined with, abnormally warm weather that, felt like summer, but it wasn't the summer crowds. And so, big fan. But anyway, I mean... just a lovely museum to walk around. A lot of outdoor hallways with tall ceilings and columns and stone. And so that was just a very cool place. It was very hard to find the Guernica painting. There was not good signage at this museum because there's a couple different stories of it. It's a few stories tall, and it was really hard to find it. I kind of wandered because I was like... that was what I was most interested in seeing. And so I didn't go in a lot of the other exhibits because I was like, this is what I want to see. But yeah, it was just a really fun building to be at. So that was really cool. Then I went to the another museum. I'm going to slaughter this word, but the Thyssian Bornemisza, maybe?
Sure.
Google it. It exists. And that one I went to specifically because at the time I was there, they had a Monet exhibit. And boy, was that cool. That was very good. It was very well done. So it was actually 2 artists. The other one, I had heard his name. I didn't really know much about him. Boudin, something like that. Boudin, Boudin, I believe is his last name. And so it was the 2 of them. And so one thing that I think you would appreciate it is that it did walk you through their work, which was cool. So it had a little thing in the start where it explained who they were and that there were these 2 artists, and it kind of talked about how pretty much it compared how similar their work was. So it had paintings side by side, one from one guy, one from the other, that were very similar. Either content or style or things like that. And it took me 40 minutes to go through that exhibit. It was, and it was, Yeah, so that was, and it's a small museum. I mean, they had one other exhibit other than that, or maybe two. It wasn't large, which is kind of nice because sometimes large museums can be really overwhelming as far as you're like, what do I even go look at right now? And so, and you had to pick an exact time to go in. So that wasn't one thing that I did get a ticket for before. It was like in 15-minute increments.
Okay.
And I think that was so that not too many people be there at the same time. So, I mean, that's closed by now. But like, that was a cool exhibit. I was really into it. And then after that, I went to the Prado. And there, let's see, it's just enormous. It's really big. I would say what I liked about the Prado was walking around the building more than actually like looking at the art.
Okay.
Just like, it's a gorgeous building. And I mean, it was almost more like the effect of all of the art everywhere than actually the individual pieces that I enjoyed. Because even walking in the main hallways, there's just these like enormous paintings and like these tall hallways and giant staircases. It's just like a really cool building. And so I just liked being there. I looked at some things. Like I said, I didn't spend a ton of time there. The only bummer was after I was there, Dan told me about Goya, who is a Spanish painter, and he told me about his work that was there. And he was like, "Did you see it?" And I was like, "Oh, no." And so I was kind of bummed because apparently, like, he was hired by, I don't know, the royal peoples, to like paint, like depict Spain. And they had a very specific way they wanted him to do it, where it was all bright colors and all happy and, you know, and everything. And then after he died, they were in his home and found that hidden in the walls were all these other paintings. And he had a note that was like, "This is what they hired me to paint, but these paintings are the real Spain." And it's all like depicting like darkness and all the awful things that were happening in the country. And so he said that one floor of the Prado is that work and the second floor is the other. And so I was like, man, apparently I need to go back to the Prado because that sounds very interesting.
That does sound interesting.
Yeah, I think, I mean, when I was there, I looked at like, they have, you know, a little like pamphlet of, you know, when you visit a museum, they typically do. And so I just kind of looked at the lists of artists and kind of picked out a few that I was interested in looking at their work. And then other than that, I was like, it was just pretty overwhelming. And by that point, I was like, okay, you know, I've seen art.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So, like, because with the Louvre, there's a couple of key pieces of art that everyone who goes usually sees.
Yes.
Right? Like the Mona Lisa, for example. Does the Prado have something or some of those things?
I recognize them. I was like, oh yes, I know about this painting. I can't tell you the names of those paintings, but there are some that I was like, definitely seen this in my textbooks, and you know, and so like, that was fun to see those in person for sure. And then the final place I went to was the maybe Kasha, something like that forum. And first of all, this museum is next to the coolest wall. I'm going to have to show you a picture of it. The
coolest wall?
The coolest wall. I'm not lying. It is this, like, nature wall. Nature wall?
Ooh, okay, that does sound cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. So, here we go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's what do you think that's like 4 stories tall or so?
Well, if we look at the side, there's at least 3 windows next to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
that might be 6 stories tall.
That's more like 6 or 7 stories, I think.
Yeah, and there's just like, it's just green, like it's just solid.
I mean, it almost looks like grass. Like growing up the sides, and then there's other like bushes and things, but it's not like ivy or anything that I've seen before.
No,
it really looks like the ground turn on its side.
Yeah, it does. You're right. Like, doesn't this look like I like edited this photo into 2 photos because around the corner are just like apartments or something.
Yeah. So and then looking at that, it looks like it's 5 stories.
Oh yeah.
If you count the floors there.
Counting. So, that was just fun to see. I would just recommend, like, I just looked at it for a while because it was very cool.
Okay, silly question. Did you touch it? Can you touch it?
I did not. I didn't even think about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's
that's
that.
Cool.
The reason
And that's part of the museum?
No, it's next door to the museum, actually. But it's just a really cool wall. So, cool. I mean, it's like across the street. All of these museums were on the same street. Like,
oh, that's convenient.
I did a lot of walking that day, but honestly, like, they were all very easy to find and really close. Not really close together, but they were like, it was very manageable to find all of them. So that was really cool. And so this one I went to specifically because they had a Disney exhibit. And so...
like a permanent one or it's a traveling one?
I don't think it's permanent. Yeah. And so it was just a lot of like original artwork from the old films and things like that. And so...
That's cool.
That was really fun. So I didn't even plan on going there. And then I had a little extra time and I was walking past it and I was like, oh, I heard about this museum. And then I saw the really cool, like, Maleficent sketch that they were using to promote it, which I'd seen online. And I was like, ooh, yes, can I go look at that? And so that was really fun too. So that was, Madrid. And then I did another day in Madrid. I went to the botanical gardens, which you had told me about. That was really cool. Just like, it was raining a little bit that day, but there were so many trees that like I was hardly getting wet. And so
that's nice.
It's huge. It's big. Yeah, it was so fun. I kind of like just let myself get lost in there. And so that was really cool.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. I will tell you something that might bother you. If you and I went there, we would need to split up in our time there. Everything was labeled. Every plant, great. Everything,
Wonderful.
I did not read a single sign.
Of course you didn't.
Because that's not why I was there. That's why you would go there.
I mean, I wouldn't go there just to read the signs.
Sure, but I mean, you would be very interested in the signs.
Yeah.
And eventually you and I would need to just take separate walks because
I would be going significantly slower than you. Yes.
Yes, you would be going slower. And then also I'd just be like, pretty. And I wasn't going in any kind of like sequential order. I was just wandering, and so like,
yeah.
So, there's also a greenhouse in there with like these different, I'm going to use the wrong words, climate zones. Is that what you would say?
Sure. Yeah. Like
there's like a desert and a rainforest and different things
biomes.
Like that. Yeah. So that was really fun to walk in there. And then there was a cafe inside of there. And so I went and got a glass of wine and just like sat out in this like quiet. It was like the botanical gardens are like in the middle of the city and they're so quiet. And so that was just
really, even in the middle of the city.
Yeah, and then you walk back out and it's like back to the bustling and the cars and all of that. And so so that was really cool. I did listen to a Rick Steves tour on
one of the
app.
walking tours.
One of the walking tours that he has on his app for free to download.
And
I would recommend it if you like audio walking tours. I mean, I liked it because I think that's fun. I wouldn't want to spend my day doing that, but it was like a 45-minute
day
one.
Long, was
it? It was. No, yeah. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't want to do much more of it than I did. Also, like, I think being alone, it was kind of funny to like, it'd be like, go here, look at this, find this thing, stare at this, and so there were timing when I was like, I don't just want to stand here right now. I kind of want to keep moving, and so like I would like speed up a little bit. You can put it on like double time, if you, and things like that. Cause it just was like, the timing was, but in general, the timing was really good. Like they kind of figured out how long it will take you to walk to different places. It was interesting. It was easy to follow. It was so cheesy. Have you listened to those before?
No, because I've never been to a city where he offers those.
Okay. It's so cheesy.
Is it really?
Like, yeah. Okay, so like it starts with the Puerta del Sol, which is kind of like the Times Square of Madrid. So like smaller than Times Square. It doesn't have the screens. However, it's a similar idea of like it's this popular area to go see, and there's people in all those like stupid knockoff costumes trying to take pictures with you that I'm like, please leave. And so, but it's a very cool city. It's square. And so, and then it goes to the Plaza Mayor, which is just gorgeous. And, so it goes to some like key places in Madrid. The funny thing is at the Puerta del Sol, there's this like really old, panaderia, which panaderias are all over Spain. It's a bread shop.
It's a bread shop, yeah.
Pan, yeah. And so,
that sounds wonderful to me.
I know, right? Yeah, and like baked goods and all that stuff. And so, but it was this really, really old one, and so it was like, you can pause this if you want and go in and order these things, you know, and then they like do this little like skit essentially where they like, because it was this woman from Madrid and Rick Steves together on it, and then they were like, excuse me, can I have one? And like, these are delicious. Like,
in English?
Yes, but just like on the audio thing, they're just like,
that's
weird. Or they do
I was
part
thinking
of it in
you were
Spanish. They do the ordering in Spanish. That's probably them trying to be helpful. It was so cheesy. It was like,
oh boy.
Yeah. However, it was really interesting. They explain like why the street signs are the way they are, because the street signs are on the sides of the buildings and they have pictures on them, so they're very different. Like even where you look for a street sign is different. And so that was just like but it was a high cheese level. It's like there were points where I was like, you guys need to chill a little bit. So yeah, but yeah, it was I enjoyed Madrid a lot. It's not my favorite, but it reminded me, I think the overall experience reminded me a lot of my experience in Rome, where it's just so many impressive buildings. And like I remember being in Rome and seeing all these buildings and just being like, how is this not the main attraction? Like, how is this not why is this not even on my map as like an interesting building? It's just whatever building, and it's gorgeous. And it was a very similar experience in Madrid where it's just very fun to walk around and look at the buildings. And so, I mean, I always enjoy that. And so, I think that was fun. It's, I would say if somebody's choosing one or two cities to visit in Spain, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, it's not the top of my list. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like, there's way cooler places.
Sure.
And so,
but as far as like flights go, since it's the capital city, do a lot of flights fly in and out of Madrid?
Oh, for sure. And then all these trains go through it too. So it's very easy if you go to Madrid to take a train to another city. And so I'd say, like, especially if you are into museums, like, yeah, sure, spend a day there or two. But I would not make it like the highlight of like the main attraction of a trip, you know? But it was very cool to actually see it since I had been there a couple times, you know, and yeah. And then let's see, the last thing I did, so there's this really cool smaller town outside of Madrid that's has one of the oldest universities in the world in it. It's called Alcalá de Henares, and I met this girl who's doing like a grad program at that university. She's from Madrid, actually, and so she invited me to go hang out with some people at this like beer festival that was in that town that day. But like, what a gorgeous little area. I'll show you a couple pictures from there. Because it was just like, that was like, I would say like, go there and walk around, because that was like, really cool. So like, this is like the main plaza in that town. And that's like some of the university that you can see in the background there. So you can see like a really large gazebo. Yeah. And then like these really old buildings. And then,
okay, I'm going to have a comment. Yes, and it's going to sound really dumb. Okay. So if you go back to that picture with the gazebo and everything, right? I'm looking at the towers, right? Yes. They look like clock towers or whatever. And I was like, oh, those look very Spanish. Because you're in Spain. But what I was thinking of, like, you know, like you in Southern California, or California in general, right?
This
Spanish
does look like Southern California here, right?
Style. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, it looks very Spanish. Oh, because it's in Spain, so it is Spanish.
It's the real deal. It is the real deal.
Okay, gotcha. That's the original. I get it.
Oh, and then the author of Don Quixote is from here. So you can see his house.
Okay, cool.
So, saw his house.
Cervantes, is that right?
Yes, you're right. Yeah. This was the festival. I mean, it just felt like a festival in Seattle or really any city. Yeah. But then this street here was very fun to walk in. This was like very much an experience I had in a lot of places in Spain, where like the cafes, like the restaurants, they all have outdoor seating that's just on the street. Gorgeous old buildings, lots of people out and about, like Spaniards like to be with all the other people. And so just like people want to be together and they want to be out. And so that was just like, this is just very classic here, just like lots of people around and everything. And so
sounds like that's just right up your alley, personality wise.
Sure, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then it was so funny because in the evening when we were there, we went back to the plaza and look, okay, I don't know if you can see so there's all these like benches lining this whole square and people on every single spot possible. And I asked this girl, I was like, oh, is there like an event going on or something? She's like, no, this is just the time of day where people come hang out here. And so it was just like, you can see there's just a lot of people around and together. And so
but just because that's what you do in the evening.
Yes, that's what you do. Yeah. And so
that's cool.
Yeah. So it was fun to get to witness that a few different times. And I think it was fun to see that in a smaller pueblo than like a large, metropolis, I guess. And so yeah, that was the thing. Those were the things that I did in Madrid. It was really cool. I did really enjoy it. And so yeah, and then after that I moved on to Valencia.
Oh, but I think we're gonna have to save Valencia and the other cities for our next episode. So
all right, that sounds good.
Can you wait that long, Cheryl?
I mean, for you and I, it's going to be moments before. For our listeners, it's going to be a week. So we'll see if they can wait that long.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we end our episode, though, let's go ahead and do the Wish You Were Here. So each of us is going to highlight a travel attraction from wherever. For you, it does not need to be connected to your Spain trip. So yeah, would you like me to go first or would you like to go first?
How about you go?
Okay. So the place that I'm going to recommend is out on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. If you know the area at all, it's kind of in between Port Townsend and Sequim. So it's kind of on the northern end of the peninsula. And it's a spot that is beautiful and has a lot of character.
I'm concerned for what you're about to say.
No, it's awesome.
I do not know where this is going right now.
So it's called Troll Haven.
All right. That is certainly a title of a place.
It is. Apparently. And it has a big, giant purple castle.
What?
That you can stay in.
Have you stayed
yes. So when my dad turned 60, we did a big weekend getaway, and they have multiple houses, I guess, or like places that you can stay on the property. And
cottages, maybe cabins.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than a cabin, but just different homes Units. That you can stay in. And so we stayed in one of them. We didn't stay in the castle. The castle is a little bit more expensive.
Stay in the castle.
We did not, but we were able to. They took us on a tour, so they took us on a tour through the castle because nobody was staying there at the time.
This sounds so fake.
No,
did you Photoshop it or what? This is a real thing.
Yeah. Yep. Here, let me. And you can you can get married there if you want to.
Whoa! What?
Yep, it's a functioning. It actually has a farm, so they have, I think, apples and I don't remember what all the different fruit and things that they have there.
Trees, probably.
No gumdrop trees.
Okay, real agriculture apparently.
So here's the Gatekeeper's Castle, and it's super fun. I mean, it has like a dungeon feel downstairs.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a dungeon.
Yeah, and it's super cool.
Is this place?
It's gorgeous, and so you can rent the whole. It's not even that expensive, or I think you can rent like part of it. You can rent the whole thing. You can do events there, but like I said, they have multiple properties, so like different places where you can stay.
Yeah, it looks way less tacky than I thought it was going to look.
Yeah. It's not super tacky. It's
not
a little
super
odd
tacky
because it's got the purple. But so we stayed in the carriage house.
Oh, was there a carriage in there or?
There's no carriage. Okay. I'm so sorry. But then there's also like these other places like Neptune's Keep and Dragon's Keep and the Craftsman's Keep, and there's all of these different places that you can stay. And it's beautiful because it's on the water. It's big, huge, like open land. You can just kind of wander around. There's not a lot of people out there. And they have these carvings of...
Oh no, what?
Trolls. They carved...
Are these like the
trolls out of wood?
The carvings that we talked about at the Trees of Mystery? Those types of carvings?
A little bit, actually.
Okay.
Hold on.
Sensing a theme here.
I mean, a little bit. So here's an example of one of the things that they've carved.
I don't like it. Okay, I'm going to describe for our listeners, that is straight out of Picasso's Blue Period. It is a rabbit-looking... It's not a rabbit.
It's
to me,
not a
it
rabbit.
reminds me of a rabbit. It looks like Narnia gone wrong.
Yeah, it's like Mr. Tumnus, because it's a... What is it?
Mr. Tumnus, if you're not a good artist.
Well,
and
yeah.
all
okay.
blue.
But that's not technically one of the trolls.
It still is
this is technically also not one of the trolls, but here's like the old fisherman person that they carved.
I don't like him either, but he's not nearly as bad as the blue Tumnus thing.
Here's a troll.
No. Nah. I'm out.
Yep. Really? I think they're really cool. I think it's hilarious.
Okay, I mean, it's impressive that
here's a creepy troll.
No! Do you like those?
I think, so part of it was, because my sister found it, and my dad is totally like the Archie McPhee's, like the weird, bizarre thing, so it totally fit to bring my dad to a place like that.
Okay, so part of it for you is like the family experience.
Yes, and it is so, they're so weird and so bizarre, I did sort of get a kick
into it. Okay.
Out of the weirdness.
I mean, it's possible I would get a kick out of it, but seeing a photo of that, like, I'm not on board. I mean, although it would make me want to go see it out of curiosity if I was already on the Olympic Peninsula.
Right, so like here's this other building. It's like their barn, and they have, you see on the four corners, I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, are they holding up the building, or are they like instead of columns?
Yeah, it's probably around where the column is, but yeah, they have these big giant carvings of like
I don't like
people.
No.
But there's the castle.
Okay with the Trees of Mystery than I'm okay with this, Ryan.
Oh, really? I found the Trees of Mystery one way creepier. Oh, here you go. And outside the castle, you've got a few of them, and you got a wizard.
Oh,
see the wizard?
Yeah. Yeah, there's Gandalf, all right.
Yeah. It's just, it's super quirky, but it's really, really fun. And I would definitely recommend it unless you're Cheryl, apparently.
Yeah. Okay, I would go if I got like an invitation or like I was already over there.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, well, I guess that's your wish you were here, but just like not directed at me then. Is this correct?
I think once you got there, I think you would I think you could really enjoy it. You might not want to be near the trolls, but they're not everywhere. They're just in a few places. I might not want
that to be my wedding venue, is what you're saying. You know, like that might not end up being the top pick. Yeah.
I mean, I think it probably wouldn't be your wedding venue because it wouldn't hold enough people. Oh. However,
what size are we talking about? What kind of guest list?
You could rent out the castle just for the wedding party, and that would be amazing.
Sure. Okay. Maybe it could be your wedding venue then, Ryan.
Okay. What's your wish you were here, Cheryl?
My wish you were here is everything that is not that. Not Trollhaven. Anywhere else is where I wish I was. Okay. So mine is actually kind of infringing on your territory a little bit. So I think you do know. I know. I'm very sorry. I think you.
Are you really sorry though?
No, I'm not. You probably know more about this than I do, but I'm the one that's been there. And so I will share about it, and then you might need to fill in some of the facts if you're aware of them. This is in Arizona, outside of Tucson, specifically in Oracle, Arizona, because that's a place.
Never been there, but I trust you that it exists.
Yeah. I've called it the Biodome, but on the internet it's calling it the Biosphere.
Okay.
I think maybe it goes by both. You know it as the Biodome, correct?
I had heard it as the Biodome, but maybe it's Biosphere.
Technically, it is the Biosphere 2 because Earth is the first one, which made me laugh very hard when I heard that.
That makes sense. Sure.
And Mr. Science, can you please explain what that means? Because I will not do as well of a job as you will.
Yes, but first I'm going to explain, and I'm a little embarrassed about this, why we both thought it was Biodome and not Biosphere.
Okay.
Because there was a 1996 movie called Biodome.
Okay, I haven't seen that movie.
Me neither. I remember when it came out, and it looked really dumb then, and it probably still was, but that's probably why that name is in our heads.
Okay, but also, like, I'm Googling, like, Arizona Biodome, and there is also stuff about the Biodome in Arizona. So I think, like, it's called that as well.
It could, but I think it's probably because of the movie.
I think officially it is called the Biosphere 2.
Yes.
And
so
the fact that there's a 2 on it delights me to know
that is really, yeah, I enjoy that. So the idea is, and it actually is more pertinent now almost than when they made it,
I know,
but
right?
was trying to have a self-contained ecosystem where it was completely sealed, like airtight, watertight from the rest of the world, to see if we could just maintain enough oxygen and food and everything. I think ultimately the idea was to build a colony on another planet or somewhere like that, I think. Mm-hmm. But then you could also run experiments where, what if you change this about the environment? How does that affect things and stuff like that? So, I mean, it's a legit scientific endeavor, I believe.
Well, yeah, and they had people live in it for a couple of years.
Yeah, and it didn't go as well as they thought.
Oh, yeah, we learned about that.
Yep.
We learned about, like, the personality issues of the small group, which was, like, really funny because, so pretty much I got to tour it, and it's a cool tour. Yeah, you get to go inside.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I know. It's very cool. And then also they talked about, like, what went wrong with the experiment, and there was a point where, like, apparently none of them were told who the leader was. And so, like, there was some, like, decision-making things that had to happen that, like, there ended up being, like, 2 camps. Because it was a small group, like, maybe 6 people or something like that lived in there. The original plan was for 2 years, but then eventually they were, like, malnourished. And so they weren't able to stay for the whole time.
I thought there was an injury, too, wasn't there?
Maybe. Yeah. And mainly they talked about how, like, they were getting enough calories, but they weren't getting enough, like, nutrients with the... Because it's, like, the whole, like, they need to be able to sustain, like, and make all of the food that they need to eat and all that stuff.
Right.
And so, but yeah, you get to tour it. There's, like, I want to say 5 different, like, climate areas. And so there's, like, a desert one and, all these different ones. It's the same as that greenhouse that I went to in Madrid. This is the same thing.
Basically, you just went back to Biosphere 2. Okay, got it.
But it's so interesting. It was very cool. That sounds
really cool.
Yeah, my dad actually got to visit it when there were people living in it. And obviously at the time, you wouldn't be able to go in, but you get to go to the outside and learn about it. And he, like, saw one of the people through the window and everything, which would be such a weird thing to be like that alone with a small group, and then also have people
watching you.
Your facility.
Yeah, that would be really weird.
Yeah, it'd be like being in a zoo or something. But yeah, I would totally recommend it if somebody is in the Tucson area. I would say go out, check out the Biosphere 2, because it's a great tour. It's fascinating, and you're right. I think today it's more interesting than ever, considering, like, the purpose of it is to see, like, if people could live on another planet, and now it's like, so, it's cool. It's huge. It's a cool building. Yeah.
That's cool.
Wish you were
I do wish I was there.
Yep. I know. You just want to go live in a biodome.
Well, no, but I would like to visit one. All right. Well, that's all the time that we have for this episode. But we're not done with your trip yet, Cheryl. Whatever will we do?
I guess we'll have to talk about it again next week.
Okay. I guess that works for me. So if you're listening and you want to hear about the rest of her trip, and Madrid wasn't even, like, the best part. So if you still want to hear about the best part of the trip, I guess you got to listen again next week, huh?
Yeah. We got them now.
Yeah. So if you want to follow us on social media, see pictures of some of the things that we talked about today. If you want to see some pictures from Trollhaven, some of those cool things,
don't.
Yes, we'll link to that from our social media. We are at TMWY Podcast, Timwe Podcast for Take Me With You on the socials.
Yes, we are. You can also email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com. Send us suggestions of guests that we could have on, or questions. If you have questions about a trip coming up or where you should go, we will answer them on air, or all sorts of things. What are your thoughts? We would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. You can also give us a phone call and leave us a voicemail message if you'd like. The number is 406-POD-TIMWE, 406-763-8699. You can even send a text message to that number if you want to. Yeah, we are that set when it comes to technology.
Yes, we are.
Yep. We would also really appreciate it if you would rate and review us on whatever podcasting listening thing you happen to be using at this point in time, because that would be helpful for us just to know what you guys are thinking, what you like, help other people find out about it if you enjoy it.
Yeah. As always, thank you so much to Beth Morale for our awesome artwork.
Beth.
We love it so much. You can check her out at Beth Is Something.
Yeah. So that's going to be it for this episode. So until next week when we get to hear more about Cheryl's trip to Spain, just remember, next time you go on a trip, take me with you.
Take me with you.